James is unlike anybody I've played, and I ended up leaving with a huge amount of compassion for him, a huge amount of compassion. And there, in and of itself, I found compassion for myself too. In film, I was used to kind of serving the story by like ushering the story along, but not really being the focus. And so when I saw this script with James, there was something that really intrigued me. And I think the most intriguing part was his stillness, watching this man kind of go and walk through the world with the weight of the world on him. Oftentimes in the quietness and stillness is where the loudness is able to reverberate, it's able to vibrate and really be heard. And I wanted that. I wanted to experience that because, I don't ever want to be pigeonholed. I don't think any actor worth their weight in salt wants that, especially any actor of color wants that.
Hey, you good? Hey, look, if it get dark now, you just ride it, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do I do that?
When I first read James, I found myself judging him a little bit, which is something I never try to do. There was a bit of this guilt that was going on with him. Him not really being able to deal with his grief and loss was really, part of me was really trying to confront a lot of the things that I was dealing with myself, the parts that I was angry with myself, when I was dealing and am dealing with when it comes to grief and loss and guilt. But I also had a true sense of care for him. That was something that was very important. I really cared about him a lot. I really wanted him to be okay. And there was also this kind of kindling of friendship that I wanted to explore. To be able to explore that with Jennifer was also something that was incredibly exciting to me because I have been a fan of Jennifer Lawrence's, as many people have, for quite a long time. She has been doing this since she was 17, even younger. She's a pro, and she started in independent filmmaking. You know what I mean? Like, this is where she started. And so to watch her kind of come back to this, to come back to her roots, as it were, of doing a movie like this with this kind of quietness, this kind of stillness to it, this true character development and dissection and research of what it's like to get to the true essence of what it means to be human was beyond exciting to me. Intimidating, like incredibly intimidating. But at the same time, I felt that there was an opportunity for both of us to raise each other up, to test these kind of quarters that we hadn't really explored yet, to really also find a place of safety. I feel like that, in essence, is what we got to. The final product kind of shows that. Lila was an undergrad at Yale, and I was a first year at Yale School of Drama. We go back almost 18 years or so closer to 20 years at this point. I always knew that she was going to do something great. I really did. I always knew that she was going to go off and become this amazing comet that she is. And so I graduated and I started my career in New York theater. And then she, after her graduation, did the same. And so we would always cross paths. It was always this thing of like, when are we going to work together? Like literally screaming at each other in the streets of New York about when we're going to like collaborate. We were kind of over it. We were like, when the hell is this going to happen? And so then I get this call that she's doing this movie, her first feature. And that's all I needed to hear to sign up. I don't want her finding me and like taking my kneecaps out about it, but there's this special quality of her that I really care about. And I call it the Lila squat. And what the Lila squat is basically, let's say we're in the middle of, our scene, we're doing our thing and, cut is called and you're having a conversation with your scene partner and then you turn and she's like right there, like she's there and she wants to discuss, like it's something that's very rare. It's truly a gift. And I think the reason that she gets that close is because there's an intimacy to her direction. It's not anything that is on presentation for anybody else, not for the crew, not for any producer that happens to be. It's really intimate. It's between the actor and her.
All right, what's dog?
Being back here.
You don't got love for this city?
This movie was fraught with a lot of things. And one being it took 2 years to finally come to the final product. There were a lot of changes that were happening. I think the first time that we started filming this in New Orleans, there was a tropical storm. I had never heard the word evacuation more in my life. Also, to hear the word evacuation in a place like New Orleans, knowing what the history of that is, knowing what that means to that particular atmosphere and environment, it really activated us in a completely different way, especially since our two characters are natives of New Orleans, born and raised there. 2020 happened. We filmed what we did the first time, and then I think we always had the impetus to come back to revisit it because we felt after what we had filmed, and especially after Jennifer and I connecting on the first shoot, we were like, there's something else. There's something else. We were all staying very much in touch, making sure that everyone was okay. And so I find out at some point that Jen has been staying and sheltering over the hill from me. Like, she's literally on the other side of the hill. And we were like, screw it. Let's get together. I know that there's protocols. Let's meet outside. Let's stay 6 feet apart, but we have to break this thing open. And we're just sitting out in her garden, and we're just really talking about the parts that we felt we needed to see and the parts that we felt we needed to champion for and the parts that we thought would actually aid in the healing for the two of these characters. And then we go back. And the crazy part about going back is that it's post-pandemic and the way we left New Orleans had shifted, and the way we were going to New Orleans had shifted. We were all different. Everyone was different. And not only that, everyone at this point that is in front of your face is a survivor. It sunk into us a little deeper when we went back to these characters. Like, Lindsay and James are survivors. Like, that is what it is. And it helped us really understand how to get to the place of helping them lay these burdens down, especially for James, to not so much circumvent his grief, not to go around it, not to go over it or under it, but to go through it. He is missing a limb, and there's this syndrome called phantom limb syndrome that most amputees deal with, which is basically that you and your body still believe that that appendage is still there. And that reminded me a lot of grief. It reminded me a lot of loss, like how you can have this thing that's always been there, this person, this representation of something, of love and a relationship, of care. And then all of a sudden it's gone, and you still don't really know. Your brain and body haven't really navigated what that is. So I think that when people go through trauma, there is a text, there's a scribe that happens when you have to retell your story over and over again of how you got to where you were, how you lost this limb, and you get tired of that trope after a while. You get tired of like having to be your narrative of trauma. And then what happens when somebody sees beyond that and really gets to cut through and see you, really get to the core of who you are. And that's what we realized was missing for James and Lindsay, was like, oh, wait a minute. They actually found somebody else, and they can drop everything and actually get to the core of who they were and who they want to be. It took 2020, I think, for us to figure that out, because we were all changed.
It's not the city.
Then what is it?
When you suffer some kind of traumatic loss or injury, and then you're labeled as disabled, you then have to figure out how to navigate life again. You have to figure out how to, I guess in a way, get to a place of making your disability ordinary. He suffered the hugest loss of his life in an automobile accident, and yet he spends his life fixing other people's cars. So not only do you wake up every day, because there's a lot that goes into an amputation, okay? Like to normalize it, there's a lot that goes into it. For him, he has a below the knee amputation, not an above the knee amputation, which then means that there's flexion. Okay, cool. But then you also have to put a sleeve on. There's a click that happens so you know that your leg is in place. You have to figure out how to dress it. You have to figure out a lot of things. And then not only is he doing that, but then he's going to an auto body shop to fix everybody else's cars. So there's a part of me that feels like there's a bravery to him, but also there's a part of me that's like, is he paying penance? Like, is there a part of him that feels like he deserves this? It just made me want to put my arms around him. There was something to be said that I just didn't realize of how commonplace we can make our loss sometimes, how commonplace we can make our trauma, and how we don't want to like burden anybody else with it. We don't really feel like anybody sees it, you know? And I think that that's the truth about when Lindsay comes along, because he's seen for the first time. And I was like, this is the most teenage juvenile friendship connection I've ever seen. I was like, here you have these two people who have been marred by these different losses and tragedies, but yet when they get together, they're like sitting in a park. They're sharing a blunt together. They're having a burger. They're riding in the car, joking about, you know, getting a row machine. They're having snowballs together. There was something quite beautiful in the discovery of this adolescent kind of peak in them. You see this spark happening with both of them, where they're not their disabilities, they're not their losses, but also you see that thing that happens in reality where it's like, well, don't forget though. Don't forget that this is still going on for you. Don't forget that you still carry this. Don't forget, there will always be those moments that happen in that movie for them where they get right to this place of discovering that they don't have to be their losses and they don't have to be the things they carry. And then something comes in, and that's life, you know, like that is life. That is truly how navigating grief feels like. The great part about the collaboration of this movie is that we did confer. We did sit down. We did rip pages. We did sit and we really wanted to figure it out. I was like, this will probably never happen again. Like on another film, it will probably never happen again. That's the great thing about doing something independent like that, is that your feelings, your emotions you can put them right in the room and talk about it. What we love the most about the ending is that there was a beginning of something. The Causeway in and of itself is like 29 miles of road over an open body of water, right? It's just a stretch of road that begins in one place and ends in another place, and it's going two directions, and there's no exits, and there's nothing more terrifying, right? I feel than the suspension of being in between two places. You don't know if you're there yet, and you don't know how far you've come from where you left. But that, in essence, I believe, is grief. Like, that's the journey of grief. But the whole thing isn't so much about the destination. It is really, truly about the journey of it, because it's about your way through. It's not so much about how it looks on the ending of it, but it's truly about you just beginning. And I think that that's what we wanted to really capture in this movie for these characters, is that they're choosing to begin something. I've been told most of my life how to be, how to show myself, how not to be, especially more often than not, how not to be. And I feel like what I've been able to do is find these different characters, find these different souls who are yearning to be seen in a way that they haven't been seen before. And they also help me in a way, show me in a way that I've never been seen before. And that's exciting. Like, the possibility of being more and doing and showing more than what people want to put on you is the most exciting part of my job. I don't care how many lines, I don't care how many scenes, I don't care if he's in the background for a number of hours, you will feel him. The main thing that I want, honestly, and I say this quite often, is that all I want people to do when they see me in something or they see a character I play is that they turn off their television or they go to their car and just for 1 second, just ask, I wonder if he's okay. That's the only testimony I want to leave.